Hey Narwhals, I'm your host Luke Narwhal, and welcome back to another weight loss story. Hope you enjoy. How genetics make you fat. I've seen a lot of posts in the subreddits about how daily habits are the key to weight loss, and how it isn't all about genetics, and you are right. But recently, I've read up on how genetics can make someone more prone to obesity, and it's really helped me understand my brain and body when it comes to food behaviors and weight loss, and I thought it was worth sharing here. Disclaimer, I'm just a person reading academic papers and trying to wrap my head around them. There are lots of people out there that have much better understanding than me, and I will happily be corrected on any mistakes. The main gene out there that's been clearly linked to obesity is the FTO gene. You get two copies, one from each of your parents, and I recently found out that both of mine put me at high risk for obesity. Thanks, Mom and Dad. I'm not obese. I have a BMI that sits about 25-ish, borderline overweight, but I do feel like I'm constantly counting calories and fighting to keep it there. I wanted to find out what this FTO gene is about and if it means I'm genetically destined to become obese one day. I found out that currently they don't know. Scientists aren't sure what about this gene makes people on average 3 kilograms heavier and 1.67 times more likely to become obese. But they have some useful ideas, and one in particular resonated with me. People with both copies of the high-risk FTO gene have higher ghrelin levels, even after they have finished a meal. Ghrelin is the thing that makes you hungry, so effectively they need to overeat to feel full. Also, they find pictures of calorie-dense foods more appealing after eating when others don't, and they tend towards higher fat foods when selecting from a buffet, which results in consuming 100 to 200 calories more. My immediate reaction was that this gene sucks, and that I could never have that happy, full feeling after a meal. But now knowing that, it's a lot easier to turn down snacks or desserts after a meal that I previously reached for to feel full, when I know that feeling full really means overeating. I've had a lot easier time sticking to my calorie goal because of it. I've also switched out some high fat and high sugar foods and added in more protein, and that definitely helps. Genetics is important, but there are plenty of obese people that don't have the high-risk FTO gene, and plenty of healthy weight people that do. It's not the be-all end-all, and daily healthy habits and exercise are the biggest determinants of weight. But for me, it's helped me be more conscious of how my body is and how it works. Thanks to anyone who has read this far, and if you are interested, I found this out using the CRI Genetics Ancestry Plus Traits DNA Kit, and their database probably has some inherent biases. 15% of people have both high-risk FTO genes, 47% have one, and 37% have both low risk. Too long didn't read, genetics impacts weight partly because your body is telling you to eat more. You don't have to listen to it. Edited to make it clearer, I am not saying genetics is an excuse. Actually, the opposite, and I am not asking for weight loss advice. I am simply sharing this because this knowledge has helped me and I thought it might help someone else. Sources. This is very interesting, and potentially an explanation for why I've always had a disproportionate appetite. Not that it excuses how fat I became, but I've always had what seems to be an inherently bigger appetite than some other people, even those the same size and activity level as I am. It's not the desire to keep eating when full that people seem to discuss here in the context of binging either, nor triggered by things like sweets or processed or fried food. It's what I classify as normal appetite, just overgenuous. I haven't had the opportunity to read through the links you've shared, thank you, but off the cuff, I'd guess there's even an evolutionary basis for the selection of people who carry that genetic set. They would be naturally inclined to consume more, so be a bit heavier than the people who stop sooner, and therefore are more likely to survive through times of famine. I know I have ancestors, as close as my actual parents, who survived starvation, sometimes more than once. That's probably true for the broader mass of humanity too. Of course, none of this means that one is destined to become or remain overweight as a result of one's genetics either, but it's still an informative piece of the puzzle and can help people understand why they are the way they are. Fascinating. Thank you for bringing it up. If this is the case, it could explain why I've had so much benefit from keto and intermittent fasting. When I was over 400 pounds and stuffing my face with pizza and whatever else, I'd be so hungry within 6 hours of eating that I'd feel sick, like I was going to get rid of food that was no longer there. The obvious answer to this is to not allow myself to go 6 hours without eating. Couple that with big portions, and it's catastrophic. I started cutting carbs from my diet and counting my calories, and I slowly realized that when my diet is higher fat and protein and very low carb, I don't get nearly as hungry. 6, 8, 10 hours later, I'm barely hungry at all. So I started doing 16+ hour intermittent fasting, sometimes up to 23 hours, basically one meal a day. Warning from Luke Narwhal, please see a healthcare professional before trying fasting. It's way easier to track calories when you're only eating once a day, and it's way easier to eat only once a day if you're not hungry, which seemed to help with me. So if the issue is increased ghrelin, and if keto helps suppress ghrelin, then it makes sense that keto would be beneficial for someone who has these particular genetic markers. The one article mentioned cycling as an activity that helps more than others. I wonder what other activities would be most beneficial. Interesting reads. Hopefully there's more research into this. I'm sure the pharmaceutical industry will want to, if they can create a pill to combat it that they can profit off of. I always thought that there's two types of people, the ones who eat when they're stressed and the ones who do the opposite. I've noticed that even after I lose a lot of weight, I still get super hungry when I'm stressed out like I used to. Thank you for the information. I wonder if this partly explains why I never feel satiated. I know that anxiety and stress are factors that cause me to overeat too, as they make my body feel like a black hole that can't be filled. It likely also explains why keto shuts off the part of my brain that shouts at me to eat. Unfortunately, keto is really hard to stick to in my environment. Will mull this over and keep it in my mind when I think I'm hungry. I remember as a child, I would tell my mother I was hungry when I was starting to go to bed. She would always say, "You're not hungry, you're tired." And she was absolutely right. Not only do I not get timely cues from satiety while eating a meal, but I have a really hard time determining when it's time to actually eat or when I'm feeling other cues from my body. Slowing down during meals and talking to yourself in a nice way to determine what you're truly feeling really does make a dramatic difference. Probably the wrong subreddit for this conversation, as evidenced in some of the comments you've gotten, but there's also some evidence that epigenetics may also play a role in obesity. Epigenetics is the idea that environment regulates whether and how genes are expressed. It fell out of favor for a long time, but it's recently gaining more acceptance. One of the studies that helped support the idea found that women who were pregnant during famines were much more likely to have babies who grew up to be obese. That is, babies who were not genetically related, but who went through a famine in utero grew up to be obese, while their younger siblings who were fully genetically related and grew up in the same household but did not experience the famine as a fetus did not. The theory is the stress of the famine on the fetus activates certain genes that increase the likelihood of obesity. As you clearly understand, but some commenters don't, the takeaway here isn't just to shrug and say there's nothing you can do about it if your genes make you fat. The point is that better understanding the factors working against you means you can come up with a more effective approach to weight loss. So if you know that you're literally built to have a bigger appetite than the average person, just trying to reduce the size of your meals is probably a bad strategy. Instead, you might want to try a smaller calorie deficit and increase daily physical activity, or focus on cutting calories by eating the same portion sizes, but lower calorie dense foods. Anyway, thanks for the post, but sorry for those comments. It's almost like weight loss and gain is a complex topic with many influences. Genetics are not the answer, and neither is good habits. I've been hoarding food and secretly binging since I was capable of doing so. I'm talking like 5 years old. No one else in my family does this, so it's not a learned behavior. Every pair of female siblings in the history of my family on my mom's side has one fat sister and one thin one. Am I responsible for my choices as an adult? Yes. Can I blame my genetics for where I am and my bad choices? Definitely not. Can I manage my weight through diet and exercise? Absolutely. And this is the path forward to a healthier, happier me. That said, no one can tell me that I wasn't born this way. I firmly believe I'm predisposed to being fat, but that doesn't mean I get to use it as an excuse. I think that ultimately, you make yourself what you want to be. But in the absence of deliberate productive effort, genetics determines your default state. For me, that default became class 3 obese, and then I decided that I didn't want to be that anymore. And that brings us to the end of the video, Narwhals. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, please tap subscribe to join our awesome community, the Narwhals, and for more weight loss stories that help you stay on track. And here's our featured Narwhal of the day. Lost 42 pounds. I still have a way to go, but over halfway there. Consistency is the key.